The rain came down in heavy slanted sheets, soaking the cracked pavement and turning the empty streets into long silver rivers as 14-year-old Evan Carter ran through the dark with his hood yanked low, worn sneakers splashing through puddles like the storm itself was chasing him and wouldn't let go. Behind him, the orphanage lights still glowed like cold, watchful eyes, the sign out front reading, "Riverside Children's Home," as if the place was safe, kind and warm, but inside it smelled like bleach and old anger. A building full of echoes where the staff yelled more than they listened, and where the older boys had learned fast that to survive you had to be meaner than everyone else. Evan had always tried not to be. He was quiet, gentle and stubbornly hopeful in a place that punished kindness, and tonight that hope finally cracked. It started when one of the supervisors grabbed him hard by the arm and accused him of stealing extra bread from the kitchen. A crime he hadn't committed, not that it mattered. No one cared about the truth. A shove, fingers digging into his skin, a threat hissed too close to his ear. Next time it won't just be a warning. The message was clear, so Evan ran. During dinner, when the noise was loud and no one was paying attention, he slipped out the side door, heart pounding like a trapped animal. A ripped backpack slung over his shoulder with everything he owned crammed inside. 2 t-shirts, a hoodie, a battered paperback novel with half its pages missing, and a few crumpled bills he'd saved from doing odd jobs in town. Now he was out in the world, soaked, freezing, terrified, but also for the first time in years, free. The wind cut through his thin clothes, sharp and merciless, but he kept going. He crossed empty fields, ducked under sagging fences, followed a narrow dirt road that didn't seem to go anywhere at all. His legs burned, his lungs ached, but he refused to stop. Because stopping meant turning around, and turning around meant going back to a place that had already decided who he was and what he was worth. Hours later, when exhaustion had turned his steps clumsy and slow, Evan saw something through the mist. A cluster of dark shapes rising up out of the trees, a farmhouse, a leaning barn, a fence half swallowed by waist-high weeds, a forgotten farm at the edge of nowhere. He crept closer, senses on high alert, scanning for any sign of life, lights, smoke, movement, anything that meant he wasn't alone. There was nothing. The farmhouse sagged under the weight of years, its windows broken, the porch slanting to one side. The barn leaned like it was tired of standing. To most people, it would have looked ruined. To Evan, empty meant one thing: safe. He slipped into the barn through a half-open door, the smell of old hay, dust and wood swallowing him up. It wasn't warm, it wasn't cozy, but no one was yelling. No one was raising a hand, no one was watching for the slightest mistake. He curled up in a shadowed corner, pulled his hoodie tight around his thin frame, and listened to the rain drum on the roof. Loud, but strangely comforting. For the first time in a very long time, he allowed himself to believe he might have found a place to hide, and maybe, just maybe, a place to begin again. Morning light slid through the broken boards in thin golden stripes, warming his face and making motes of dust glow in the quiet air. For a moment he forgot where he was. Then his aching back and stiff limbs reminded him he'd slept on dirt, not a mattress. He sat up slowly. Outside, the storm had washed everything clean. The air smelled like wet leaves, pine needles, and new chances. Birds chattered and sang in the trees, filling the silence with a gentle kind of music. At the orphanage, morning always arrived with shouting, slamming doors, clanging trays. Here the day crept in softly, like it didn't want to scare him away. Evan stepped out of the barn and took a long look at the land. In daylight, the farm looked worse and better at the same time. Tall weeds swallowed the fields, some reached higher than his waist. The farmhouse sagged in the middle like it had been holding up a lifetime of regret. Paint peeled off in wide curling strips, porch boards bowed and cracked. Vines crawled up the walls as if the house were being slowly pulled back into the earth. And yet, beneath all the decay, Evan felt something spark in his chest, a small, stubborn flicker of possibility. He moved carefully, the way a wild animal might explore a new clearing, eyes sharp and watchful from years of needing to see trouble before it arrived. Rusted tools lay half buried in the dirt. An old chicken coop had collapsed on one side. The fences were so bent and broken they barely deserved the name. Then he saw it, tucked behind the barn and almost hidden by blackberry bushes and tall grass, an old tractor. It had probably been green once. Now it was the color of moss, rust, and long-forgotten work. Vines wrapped around its frame, and the tires sagged flat into the ground. To anyone else, it would look like junk. To Evan, it looked like opportunity. He pushed through the thorny brush, wincing as brambles scratched his hands and snagged his sleeves, but he didn't stop. Up close, the tractor felt heavy and stubborn, like a tired giant refusing to move. He wiped dirt off the hood with his sleeve, studying it with focused curiosity. He didn't know much about machines, but he knew one thing for certain. People didn't abandon something this big without a reason. Maybe there was food left inside, or tools, or something he could sell. He tugged on the door. It creaked open, complaining but not denying him. The seat inside was cracked and dusty, but something about it seemed just a little off, tilted in a way that didn't match the rest. Evan frowned and grabbed the edge of the seat. It didn't budge at first. He pulled harder, muscles straining, and finally it lifted a few inches. His heart skipped. Beneath it, hidden where no one would think to look, was a metal compartment. "What?" he whispered. His hands trembled as he worked the seat higher and pried open the compartment. Inside was a small metal box, old and dented, but solid and heavier than it looked. He dragged it out onto the grass and sat down, pulse pounding in his ears. For a boy who'd spent his whole life being told he was worth nothing, holding something that felt important was both terrifying and thrilling. He opened the box, and everything changed. Neatly stacked inside were bundles of cash, held together with brittle rubber bands, and beneath them, yellowed papers and a worn leather notebook. Evan's breath caught. He had never seen this much money in his life, not even on television. His fingers were clumsy as he counted, once, twice, 3 times, just to make sure he wasn't imagining it. $9,600. For a kid who used to get excited over a couple of quarters left on a cafeteria table, it might as well have been a fortune. This could buy food, clothes, maybe a bus ticket to somewhere warm where nobody knew his name. He could sleep in a real bed. He could stop running. His mind raced, building a life out of bills and wishes. No more stolen crusts of bread, no more flinching when footsteps echoed down a hallway. No more supervisors gripping his arm hard enough to bruise. Just freedom. Then he picked up the notebook and saw the name written carefully on the first page. Henry Whitlock. That single detail shifted everything. The money wasn't just money anymore. It was part of someone's story. Evan flipped to the first entry and started reading. The handwriting was careful and slanted, the words steady and honest. Henry wrote about the farm, about waking up before sunrise to walk the fields, about loving the land even when it broke his back. He wrote about his wife, Margaret, and the slow, cruel way Alzheimer's stole her memories, while his love for her stayed sharp and painful. He wrote about his children, Sarah, Mark, and Lily, how proud he was of them, how badly he missed them, how much he wished he had said certain things out loud instead of assuming they just knew. Regret seeped through the lines like water through old wood. As Evan turned the pages, tears blurred his vision. This wasn't just an old man's diary, it was a heart laid open. Near the back, Henry explained the money. He didn't trust banks anymore after losing almost everything once, so he had hidden his savings in the tractor, a secret safety net meant for his family if life ever fell apart again. At the bottom of the page, in shaky letters, he had written, "If someone finds this, please don't let it go to waste. And if you can, please find my children. Tell them I love them. I just didn't know how to say it." Evan closed the notebook slowly. The bills in the box felt much heavier now. This wasn't a random treasure, it was a final gift, waiting for the people it belonged to. He looked down at his thin arms, scraped hands, and shoes that were more holes than fabric. He thought about the orphanage, the shouting, the bruises, the way nobody had ever fought for him. Life had never cared about being fair. A bitter, wounded voice inside him whispered, "Take it. Just this once. Take something good for yourself. No one's ever chosen you. Choose yourself." No one would know. He could vanish. The world wouldn't even blink. But another voice rose up inside him, quieter but stronger, something that sounded like his grandmother, a woman he could barely picture, but whose words he remembered. Who you are is what you do when nobody's watching. If he took this money, he might escape his pain, but he'd become someone he didn't want to be. A thief, a liar, just another person who took what wasn't theirs. The bravest part of him, the same stubborn spark that had kept his kindness alive in a cruel place, made his choice. "I'll find them," he whispered into the empty field, notebook pressed to his chest. "Even if it costs me everything." The tiny public library in Metabrook smelled like old paper and lemon cleaner, the kind of quiet place where time moved slowly and even the air seemed to whisper. Evan sat at one of the two ancient computers, his battered backpack at his feet, the metal box hidden deep inside like a secret that might burn him if anyone else touched it. His fingers hovered over the keyboard, then began typing the names again and again. Sarah Whitlock, Chicago. Mark Whitlock, California. Lily Whitlock, New York. Search results flooded the screen. Too many strangers, too many wrong faces. Every dead end made his heart sink a little further. He'd skipped lunch to save money, and his stomach growled, but he ignored it. Giving up wasn't an option. Just as he was about to log off, a gentle voice spoke behind him. "Sweetie, you look like you're searching for something important." He turned to see Mrs. Harper, the librarian, a woman with soft grey hair, kind eyes, and the sort of patient face that made people talk without meaning to. Trust didn't come easily to Evan, but something in her tone felt safe. I'm trying to find a family," he said quietly. "The Whitlocks. They used to own a farm outside of town." Her expression shifted from polite curiosity to recognition. "Oh, Henry Whitlock's kids." Evan's heart jumped. "You know them?" She nodded. "Sarah used to work at the bank here before she moved to Chicago. Let me see what I can dig up." Within an hour, Mrs. Harper had done what Evan couldn't. She pulled an old file from county records, cross-checked addresses, and found a forwarding contact. She wrote down a phone number and slid the paper to him. He stared at it like it was a bridge to another world. His hand trembled as he picked up the library phone. "Hello?" A woman's voice answered. Hi," Evan said, voice small but steady. "Is this Sarah Whitlock?" "Yes, it is. Who's this?" "My name is Evan," he said. "I'm calling about your dad." "About his farm." Silence stretched, then her voice sharpened. "My dad's farm? Why?" Evan took a breath and told her everything. The old tractor, the hidden box, the money, the notebook. On the other end of the line, Sarah began to cry. "My dad. He left us something," she whispered. "We thought he lost everything." Over the next few days, Evan called Mark and Lily too. Each conversation was different. Some angry at first, some disbelieving, but beneath it all lay the same ache of unfinished love. 2 weeks later, 3 cars rolled up the overgrown driveway. Evan stood near the barn, his heart pounding like it had the night he ran from the orphanage, but for a very different reason. Sarah stepped out first, tall and professional in city clothes that didn't quite fit the muddy farm. Mark followed, with kind eyes and a tired smile. Lily climbed out last, already wiping tears from her cheeks as she stared at the house where she'd once lived. "This was home," she whispered. Evan brought them the box and the notebook. They gathered in the yard, surrounded by weeds and broken fences, and opened it together. Sarah read their father's words out loud, her voice shaking as the notebook turned the air thick with memories, pride he never voiced, love he never said clearly enough, regret for all the times he stayed silent when he should have spoken. They cried together in the dirt and dust, grieving a man they'd lost twice, once to life's hardships and once to death. When the tears slowed, Mark looked at Evan with something like awe. "You could have kept this," he said softly. "All of it. Why didn't you?" Evan swallowed, eyes fixed on the ground. "Because it wasn't mine," he said. "And I didn't want to be the kind of person who takes what doesn't belong to them." For a moment no one spoke. Then Sarah stepped forward, knelt, and wrapped him in a hug that was careful but real. "Thank you," she whispered. "You gave us our dad back." The old farm didn't transform overnight, but something inside it shifted. Over the next several days, the Whitlocks walked the land, sat on the sagging porch, and read more entries from Henry's notebook. The place no longer felt abandoned. It felt remembered. They kept glancing at Evan, the quiet, brave boy who had done what most adults wouldn't have. "You don't have to sleep in the barn anymore," Sarah told him one evening as the sky turned orange. "There's a spare room in the house. It's not perfect, but it's warm." Evan nodded, blinking hard. Over the following weeks, everything began to change. Mark, who worked in construction, patched the roof and shored up the porch. Lily brought groceries, blankets, and small touches of warmth. Sarah dealt with paperwork, calling child services and a lawyer to make sure Evan would never be forced back into the orphanage against his will. Slowly the farm came back to life, but the biggest transformation wasn't in the land, it was in Evan. For the first time, someone asked him what he wanted for breakfast. Someone told him good morning and sleep well. Someone looked at him after a long day and said, "You did the right thing, and we're proud of you." One afternoon, standing in the field near the old tractor, Sarah came to stand beside him. "My dad hoped someone would love this place again," she said quietly. "I don't think he ever imagined it would be you, but I think if he knew, he'd be grateful." She handed him an envelope. Inside was a small stack of cash. "It's not payment," she added quickly. "It's a thank you and an invitation. You're family now, if you want to be." Evan's throat tightened. The boy who had run through a storm with nothing but a ripped backpack and a stubborn heart now had something he'd never truly known before. A home, a future. People who chose him because of who he was, not what he could give. So now the question is for you. If you were in Evan's place, cold, hungry, with no one to protect you, and you found $9,600 hidden in an old tractor, would you have kept it? Or would you have done what he did and chosen what was right over what was easy? Tell your answer in the comments, and if this story reminded you that honesty still matters, that even the smallest person can make the biggest difference, don't forget to like, share, and subscribe for more powerful stories about real choices, second chances, and the quiet courage it takes to do what's right when nobody's watching. Because sometimes, the decision you make in your darkest moment is the one that leads you straight into the light.